Okay, good evening. I'd like to call to order the Concord Township Board of Trustee meeting for Wednesday, July 21st, 2021. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Mr. Rose, are you doing the roll call this evening?
I am, sir. Good evening. Mr. McIntosh.
Present.
Mrs. Lucci.
Present.
Mr. Dondorfer.
Present.
Okay, full house here this evening. I know our first order of business is a swearing in of part-time firefighter paramedic Kyle Langer, and so with that, I'd ask that he come forward and we'll administer the oath. Repeat after me. I solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America.
I will support the Constitution of the United States of America.
Obey the laws of the United States.
Obey the laws of the United States.
The state of Ohio.
The state of Ohio.
And Concord Township.
And Concord Township.
I will in all respects
I will in all respects
observe the laws set forth by the Ohio Revised Code.
observe the laws set forth by the Ohio Revised Code.
Strive to complete the mission
Strive to complete the mission
of the Concord Township Fire Department.
of the Concord Township Fire Department.
And will faithfully discharge the duties as a Concord Township firefighter.
And faithfully discharge the duties of Concord Township Fire Department.
Congratulations. Tell us about yourself.
Just say a couple words about yourself, yeah.
I started here about a year ago, and I would be here if it wasn't for the guy sitting in the back. So thank you guys.
It's like a parade. I like it. Yeah. Hey, Heather. I would drop the AC down to the gray or two as well, so it'll get warm in here.
All right. We're moving through the agenda. The next item is the new voting machine demonstration by the Board of Elections. And I know we have our elections director here, Ross McDonald, and his deputy. So if you guys would come forward and please.
And just looking for my cue on where I stand. So
You can stand wherever you like.
I want to let the audience know real quick. We're going to set up this voting equipment as quick as we can. It may take us a little while, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the product. Dante Lewis is our deputy director, and you'll be hearing from him here shortly. So first of all, I just want to thank the trustees for having us here tonight. Very excited because there's a lot of new things in the world of elections for Lake County. The first thing being my partner here, right here, Dante Lewis. He joined us on July 6th. He's replacing the outgoing deputy director, Jane Clare, who served for the Board of Elections for close to 30 years. I'm sure many of you at least are familiar with that name, Jane Clare. She was my mentor. I came to Lake County in 2015 as deputy director with the goal of learning from Jan and taking over from her for her, which I was lucky enough to do in 2018. What we're here to talk about, other than Dante, is this new voting equipment. So on the previous machine that we had it for 15 years. It was a great touchscreen voting machine. And what I think voters are going to find with our new product is that it feels a lot like a throwback to the old equipment. However, we feel that it's a little bit better in that you are going to be provided an actual tangible physical ballot to review after you do your voting process. So you're looking at two machines. On the left, it'll be up right here momentarily. That is the touchscreen device. When you go to the polls on election day, you'll be identified by our poll workers, and you'll be provided a blank ballot that looks pretty much like this. We'll show you here shortly. At that point, you'll be escorted over to this voting machine, and on that voting machine, there's actually a slot for that ballot to be inserted. Once it's inserted, a touch screen, an image comes up of your ballot, of all the contests that you're eligible to vote on. So just like the old equipment, you would mark, press the screen to cast your votes. However, at the end of your voting session, you're going to hit a print button, and that's going to eject that ballot with all of your votes contained on the paper ballot. So that's an additional opportunity for you to verify that those are the candidates, and those are the yes or no votes that I wanted to cast. The old equipment did have an onboard real-time paper trail. However, most people didn't realize it. It was off on the left-hand side of the unit. Most people didn't realize that your vote was being recorded there. And in the event of an audit or a recount, that's what we referred to whenever we had to recount the election or conduct an audit of the election. What Dante's getting out right now is the ballot box, where your ballot will be securely stored and transported back to the Board of Elections. This machine over here on the right is actually this is where the ballot counting process occurs. The touch screen that you'll see here shortly is where you'll be marking your ballot. That's step one. This is step two. And I think, again, that you're really going to like it. A question that we get all the time or occasionally is, well, why are you getting new voting machines? Well, the first answer is that our outgoing equipment actually was running out of replacement parts. There was just nowhere where we could source replacement parts. They were a tried and true, very great system that we had, but we just ran out of the ability to replace critical components at this point. And the state of Ohio passed voting machine funding for all the counties. So we had the opportunity to purchase this equipment with very little funding coming from the county general fund. And while I have the moment, I do want to thank the county commissioners for supporting the project. They have issued some county general funds to make this purchase happen. We see this as a 10 to 15 year investment, just like our last set of voting machines. So very excited about it. Dante's getting very close to having this up and running. While I have the time, I'm going to talk about statistics in Concord Township. Right now, there are almost 15,000 registered voters in your township, which I've only been here since 15, and I've already seen your township explode and grow. We're seeing Concord as being one of the fastest growing communities in Lake County. With that said, you have 15 precincts and 4 polling locations. Does everybody have a good idea of what a precinct is and what that means for you as a voter? And so it's just that geographically designated area where your districts are assigned. So out here, there are actually 3 public school districts. I don't know if everybody knew that, but there are technically 3 within the township. Of course, Riverside and Mentor, and even one of our precincts are split with Chardon School District. So any Chardon School District voters, I think there's about 7 or 8, I think, that reside in Lake County. But what that means for us is that if Chardon were to ever present a levy, our voters, that small number of voters, would need to see that. So, give you a hand? Yeah. So what we're doing, we're getting our equipment put up into the upright position. Got it. This is demo equipment, by the way, everybody. So it's been beat up and taken on the road. A couple of our pins are damaged, kind of. So what do we got going on the road? All right, there we go. It's very hot here, by the way. I apologize. I'm sweating. I'm not nervous. It's just I'm hot. I swear. That's all it is. What's that? Yeah. Good. We're going to get this started anytime now. So Dante's unloading, this is the privacy screen that you're gonna see put up here right now. And there is another side to the privacy booth. We had that taken off because we were doing a demonstration at the Mentor Public Library, and there were large groups coming around, and it's beneficial for you too to be able to see what's on the screen here. While I'm waiting for him to finish up, do you guys have any questions about elections? I mean, I know that's sort of a risky thing to put out there these days, but I'm glad to do my best to answer your questions. Ms. Vitas.
For the absentee voters, is that going to be automatic? How's it going to be this year?
So absentee voting, during the presidential elections, all voters are automatically mailed the application. Not the ballot, but just the application to say, hey, if you want to vote by mail, fill out the application. That's not going to happen for this election. We'll find out soon. There's some legislation out there that may or may not permit that to happen ever again. We'll see. But since I've been in elections all the way back to 2011, that's something that the state of Ohio has always done. And even your election, what we call federal election year, they'll send out absentee ballot applications to voters. Voting, as far as our new equipment, voting by mail will not change, of course. And then the early voting process. Anybody here vote early during the pandemic of the presidential election? You did? Okay, and back here, did you have a good experience when you came into the Board of Elections, got in pretty quickly and out, you felt safe and everything? We're still waiting on guidance as to whether or not we have to have all of the dividers and the masks and so forth. But we will have a very similar early voting setup for this election. So with that said, I want to turn it over to Dante to say a few words.
My name is Dante Lewis. I came here from Mahoney County, a little further south, where I worked in elections. I started there in 2011. That was right around the time that we switched to these DST-100 machines. You see your ESNS. We actually had the paper ballot back there. You mark the oval and then feed it through. But in 2018, we purchased the Express Vote, and we use that as our early voting system. So they would actually, it's going to be similar to the election day process here in Lakewood, where you feed the card, you make your selections, and then you go and pass them to the DS200. And I can tell you that our voters, they came to vote early, were jealous. They wanted to do that at the precinct level. So they voted early one time, and they said, how come we don't have those Express votes at my polling locations? They liked them that much. It was a very smooth process. The great part is you do have that paper backup. Something the voter can actually see in their hand. It goes through this machine and then it's sent down to a ballot pen. Everyone saw me open up that door. That paper ballot goes right down in there. And if there are any issues, you have that paper trail right there. I feel it is a very good system. I've been dealing with it for 10 years, and I truly believe in products. So, let's go and power on.
Should be there in the ballot box. So what I'd like to do is ask Ms. Lucci if you're interested. Would you be interested in being our sample voter tonight? Okay, very good. I want to point out Ms. Lucci and Chairman McIntosh, they've served for us as Election Day rovers in the past. And I'm sure someday we'll get Trustee Dondorfer out there and helping us out. Maybe, definitely not this year, but next year, possibly we'll reach out and do that. Another thing, while we're working on getting this plugged in here, I want to talk about poll worker recruitment. Because right now, I think we're seeing a lot of our seasoned poll workers step away from the process just because of concerns with COVID. We saw a lot of people who just could not work the polls during the general election. So we saw young people step up. I'm just concerned that maybe they're just going to do the one election. So what I challenge the group here tonight, just think about being a poll worker for us. It's actually a paid position. A lot of people don't realize that. And so when I talk to groups, say you're doing a common cause or a charity or for your church, if you get 10 people together and you all agree that you're going to donate that paycheck back to your common cause, 10 times 150, that's a quick $1,500 windfall for your group. So keep that in the back of your mind if you ever have any kind of group that you're trying to raise money for. Another thing is just vote every election. You know, we have these odd year elections coming up, and in my opinion, and I think the opinion of most election officials, these odd year elections are the most important for your day-to-day life. Someone that you elect on a Tuesday by January 1st could really have impacts on your life. And we see a sort of a opposite turnout in terms of what people see as a major election year, like a presidential election year. Huge turnout, but I think in my mind, there's so many layers of checks and balances before a president could potentially impact your day-to-day life. So with that said, how we looking, Dante?
Sure, so I'll grab a barcode.
Good. Any other questions? I think I saw a hand come up over on this side.
I think the question I have is, are most of the counties going to be getting these new machines?
Yeah, that's a great question. So actually, a lot of counties did this prior to us. Lake County, we kind of sat back and watched because we wanted to evaluate how the equipment performed. And this equipment is active in about 20 counties in Ohio out of 88, and they performed very well during the presidential election. So we didn't want to try to implement an entirely new system during the presidential election year. So that's the answer.
Okay. So,
Right. Dante?
all right.
Ms. Lucci, we're ready for you. Go ahead and put your election code in, my friend.
So you will check in, you'll be given something a little bit different than this. We're just using this for the barcode. There you go. I will take an election code.
Yep.
One.
Another thing that I hear a lot in elections is or a question about, can this connect to the internet? No, our equipment, it's not even configured or have the hardware to connect to the internet. So these are never connected to the internet. We went through a very strict round of cyber and physical security requirements and have done a lot. I mean, I think that our cybersecurity measures are right up there with the private industry, if not exceeding some private industry, which it's not always the case where government is with private sector. So we're doing things like device whitelisting, two-factor authentication, cybersecurity awareness training on a very regular basis. So those are all things that we're doing to stay.
In here?
Yeah, absolutely. So here we have Ms. Lucci. She's here to vote. So the first thing that you're going to see when you go to vote is that your card must be inserted into the machine. And I apologize, trustees, that you can't see. Well, I guess you can see this. All
See
right.
right here.
My apologies.
You're
Okay.
also live on our YouTube channel being broadcast across the whole township.
All right. Well, hello, everybody on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to scan the QR code that was generated when Ms. Lucci got checked in at the iPad. So we're going to scan this at the bottom. And the beauty of that is that it automatically knows the correct ballot style for her precinct. And we're going to confirm it. So Dante's going to say accept. We're going to see a quick instruction screen on how to mark your ballot on the new equipment. And once you're satisfied, press start voting.
Here's your ballot for favorite next.
Yep.
Select your favorite dog breed, favorite way to spend free time, and favorite USB.
So this is our favorites elections. And do you mind if we share with the world how you're voting? And that's like a pillar in our industry is the privacy of the ballot. But since it's just for fun, she voted on her favorite dog breed being a rescue dog. That's very PC choice, by the way. Your favorite U.S. beach. You know, we didn't have time to throw in Lake Erie. We should have, but she voted for Galveston Island Beach. The next contest, Ms. Lucci, the next one is actually a vote for two. So we want to simulate a scenario where a voter might have two selections to make under one contest. So the next one is favorite way to spend your free time. She's saying exercising and reading. She also would have the choice of casting a write-in ballot. And just for the benefit of everybody at home, would you mind deselecting the reading and then doing a write-in real quick? Just to show how the keyboard pops up. So the keyboard does pop up, and you can type in the name of a valid write-in. You know, I think it's very important that we talk about valid write-ins real quick. Yeah, you can type in Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck as your write-in. Oh, Ms. Lucci, if you could step left, me, I think the camera might, yeah, there we go. That's what he was saying. And, you know, valid write-ins, people can write whatever they want, but a valid write-in actually files with our office or with the Secretary of State. And after the election, we're going through and counting those valid write-ins. We've seen so many different names. I mean, you can imagine what people are writing in on those ballots. Some of them are saying, you know, none of the above, or, you know, something cute like that.
Last two questions here dealing with elections. Are you in favor of election day being a national holiday? Great choice.
And the second question was, are you in favor of Saturday voting? And the answer for me is no, because I never would get a weekend, but I guess the public would like that. So she said yes. If you would, please press review selections. So again, this is what I would say your digital second chance to confirm your selections. Just on the screen, you can see that a summary of all of her selections. And once she's satisfied, she's going to press print ballot. And it's giving her a warning that, hey, we're about to print your ballot for you. If you want to make any final changes, hit return. But I think she's comfortable.
And
you
remember,
can-
you're not done just yet, right,
Yeah,
Ross?
that is so important, because I think our voters may be thinking that we're done at this point. That's why, because we're not done yet. Now, she'll pull that out, and we'll look at her selections. If you want to hold that up to the camera so we can show that what she saw on the screen is exactly the same thing that this card printed out. Good? So that is another opportunity for you to say, no, I didn't vote for this person, or I made a mistake, because your vote hasn't been counted yet. We're going to have signage that says, wait, this is not a receipt. This thing is actually your ballot. We need you to insert it into the scanner. So behind her on her left here, we see the ballot scanner. And do you see the upper black tray there, Ms. Lucci? And do we want to see if we can get a good shot of the camera on that?
Yeah, we're working on it.
Yep. Do we want us to? There we
There we
go.
go.
Beautiful. Right there. I think it was trying to take it from her, and then, oh, there it goes.
Take it, we drop down to that. And then we'll
It
get an
compromises
idea.
secrecy.
We don't have any on us today, so we'll give you one.
So we've taken probably enough time at this point, but we really believe in the equipment. It's a great system. It's a hybrid where we're combining the benefits of an electronic voting machine with the benefits of a paper-based system. This is actually a paper-based voting system. It does things like it has ADA compliance for our voters who need to listen to their ballot as opposed to being able to see the ballot. For those who may be using a sip and puff machine, it's all 100% ADA compliant. We have a Braille pad attached to it. So it's a very well-designed piece of equipment. It is by a company who we believe is a titan in the industry, ES&S. They've been helping us with elections for quite a few years now. They were the company who developed the machine that we are, putting out to pasture, so to speak. And they're based in Omaha, Nebraska. All of this equipment is built right here in the United States. And that goes right in the box, yep. So there's actually, you maybe had seen this while we were setting up, there's a blue ballot bin in the bottom. That's what we are putting into our secure tabulation room for after the election, in the event that we had to do a recount or an audit. At the end of the night, these all are coming, there's boxes in the bottom of this are coming back to the Board of Elections headquarters on election night.
And you just lock them up, but it's already tabulated.
It's already tabulated.
The results will be released almost immediately.
So what we are having our poll workers do, once they close the machines down, there's actually an encrypted thumb drive on board of the unit that is being brought back to our tabulation room in Painesville. And then we're accumulating the results from that stick. And then we'll report that. We report on about a 15 to 20 minute schedule as polling sites are returning their supplies.
Do you reconcile the ballots printed to the ballots inserted?
Yes, absolutely we do. Yes. So what way we reconcile and what we mean is kind of balancing out the books at the end of the night. We count out the number of voters who were checked in to vote. So that's when you go to sign in your name and you've been identified, versus the number of votes cast at the polling place. Those two numbers, guess what, need to be equal. Or if they're not, there needs to be a reason why. And the most common reason why is that the voter unfortunately walked away before actually casting their ballot. That was something that we had on the old unit, I'll be honest. We had occasionally what we would call a fleeing voter. They got to the machine and they thought they were done. They walked out, the machine started chirping, and unfortunately Ohio law dictates that the poll workers cannot cast that ballot for them. So it has to be, you can't.
We chased them out of the parking lot.
Well, are you a poll worker or something? All right, look at you. Thank you for your service. Any other poll workers in the room tonight? Well, you have a great role model here to look after here, and you're absolutely right. We would try to find that voter to bring them back to the voting machine and cast that ballot. If we couldn't locate them, then we have to use them. Yes, ma'am.
What happens to the barcode after you cast your vote?
Happens to the barcode?
Yeah, what happens to that?
The encode, that gets destroyed. Great question, because that is a key. That is a live, yep.
What happens if it gets duplicated? If somebody duplicates it with a QVC scanner on their phone, can it be duplicated?
No, absolutely not. It cannot be duplicated. And you're asking a great question. This equipment goes through both federal and state certification before it's allowed to be used. So before you can even come to the state of Ohio for certification, you have to have what's called EAC certification. And then after you've received EAC, you get examined by the State Board of Voting Machine Examiners. Then they'll issue I think it's called a certificate of conformance. And then they're allowed to sell their gear in the state of Ohio. Thank you. Great question. Mr. Vita. We do not audit every election. We audit every federal year election or any election result that is within 0.5%. 0.5%. Now, in some respects, sir, we do audit. We always audit after the election in some respects, and that is doing the reconciliation that Bev brought up, where we're making sure that the number of voters who were checked in matches the number of ballots cast. When we're looking at absentee ballot envelopes, we're looking at that signature. Not only did the signature have to match the voter record to receive the ballot, the signature has to match the voter record in order for that ballot to be counted. So there's a lot. Ohio, I believe, has the best and most rock-solid election laws in the nation. We do it right. We offer a very generous early voting period. We offer a very generous election day voting process. I think we have a model election system for the states, the rest of the states, to take note. All right. With that said,
Thank you,
I
gentlemen. Thank you so
think
much
that's
for
it.
coming. I appreciate it.
yep. Sorry, everybody, that it took us a little while, and
No, it's
I
okay.
promise by the time you see us again, we'll be flipping the machines really quick and getting it all set up. We're a little new, so we're gonna get out of the way now.
Thanks.
Yep. That's right.
That's what I'm thinking. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion.
I'm sorry, Mr. Dondorfer. Mr. Chair, I apologize for the interruption, but I wanted to clarify, there's an additional line item on the agenda regarding the minutes. The previous vote was on minutes that were not fully completed. They were in draft format. So the full minutes are now before you for approval.
Okay.
Which is why you see on the second section, motion for approval of the consolidated minutes for the minutes you voted on at the last meeting. So I just wanted to clean that up. Thank you.
So we're looking for July 7th public hearing, July 7th regular, and then the third motion would be the consolidated motion.
Correct. So it'd be three, yes, sir.
3 the motion, 3 votes.
Yes.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes from the July 7th, 2021 public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the July 7th, 2021 regular trustee meeting.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move that we approve the consolidated minutes for the June 16th, 2021 special meeting with Chardon Township, the June 16th, 2021 public hearing, the June 16th, 2021 regular meeting, and the June 28th, 2021 special meeting continuation of the public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on to elected officials reports. Mr. Rose, did you have any comment from Mrs. Dawson?
There is no report from Mrs. Dawson, thank you.
All right, moving into trustees, Mrs. Lucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say I hope everybody's having a good summer, getting out and enjoying some of the events this year. We've been enjoying the concert series. Unfortunately, we had to cancel the last couple ones due to weather, but those have both been rescheduled and we have more to look forward to, so hope to see everybody there. I did have a few conversations with folks regarding one of the items on our agenda this evening, the preliminary plan development. I also had discussion with some residents regarding some drainage and water issues in their backyard, some just general zoning questions from a resident, and some complaints of noise, fireworks, dog barking type things, and I think it's a good reminder that we should try to limit our animals outside, especially when it's after hours, so we're not disturbing our neighbors. I hope everyone's doing okay with the road constructions. It seems that on Cryo Road, the businesses are still doing fine, and that's coming along very well. It looks like Lucky's is still moving along. We hope that that will open up this summer. And other than that, I hope everybody enjoys the rest of your summer. It seems like it always goes so fast after the 4th. I always say that, and before you know it, it's September. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Lucci. Mr. Dondorfer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to start off by congratulating our chairman, Mr. Morgan McIntosh, on his graduation from the Ohio Public Leadership Academy. It's quite an honor and prestigious amount of training with you, so I think it's very beneficial to township, so congratulations on that. As Ms. Lucci said, Lucky's is moving around very, very well. That seems to be everybody's interest within the township with the new supermarket, and they're moving along quite well, as is Cryo Road. That's on schedule, so we're hoping that we'll have both of those big projects completed at the same time. Did have a couple residents call me regarding some minor issues about zoning and new property, or the property that was purchased, I think from Osborne over on 608 over there. The old Osborne property. Had some discussion. We're moving forward with our pickleball court here at Town Hall, and I will be doing a presentation or a brief talk at an Eagle Scout presentation this weekend at St. Gabriel's Pavilion. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Dondorfer. I also did get a call about that property on 608. Just reminded me of that.
Yeah.
But I had received a couple questions about some of the businesses on Cryle Road. Had fielded a lot of questions about item F on the agenda tonight. A lot of conversation with that. I did receive a call from one of the managers on a business on Cryle Road asking some questions about the construction, and had made a request to myself and Mr. Roseman. I believe we took care of that. So that's. I did have a resident call me, interestingly enough, about signage and some stuff on the merge down on State Route 44, just north of Girdle. So need to maybe touch up with ODOT and see if there was some confusion there. But yard waste, I know we've had some conversations in the township with law enforcement. But I did have a chance to spend an entire week last week in Columbus on the Ohio State University campus, which I hadn't really been on before. But as you recognize, and thank you for that, I did have the honor and privilege of attending the Leadership Academy at the Ohio State University, and that was a program that was hosted by the John Glenn College of Public Affairs. And ironically, we graduated at the end of the week that coincided with what would have been his 100th birthday. So it was, I know that crowd there, you could tell the staff and the faculty were very, and you go in that building and it was constructed around it, and there's angles in the building that have to do with the re-entry angle going into the earth, and it's really, it's moving to be there, and there's a lot of stuff about Mr. Glenn, and it's pretty neat. But I got to be part of a very unique group. It was a select group. There was 4 township trustees, 3 or 4 commissioners, city council members, mayors, and state reps, and actually one school board member, which was kind of the outlier. It was a balanced group. Trustees and council aren't generally partisan, but they try to balance it out and reason and get about a 50-50 on the parties. So it was a very diverse group. We had men and women and different ethnicities represented. So I really got a chance to connect with different office holders and talk about different things. Not only, different types of issues, really powerful getting to connect with the state reps and talk about their process and how that affects with us. And, we're dealing with some of those things right now with the ARPA funds and that. So that's been very helpful. And it was the most unique leadership training I think I've ever participated in, because it was so centered on specifically public office. We discussed things like calling, engagement, decision making. We got to visit the Ohio EMA, so that big bunker. We have one here in Lake County, and this one was massive. We did some crisis rehearsal drills, just valuable. Of course, you don't get into a room of politicians and not have a talk about issues, but it was really impactful in the sense that even though issues of the day, as it were, came up, it was a really great focus on listening and dialoguing and engaging, and it was very. I just thought it was really powerful. For me, it was an empowering and transformative experience. I reconnected with my calling. When you think about why I ran for office and serving a community and just making a difference, that's really what it was about. So when we wrapped up the week, they asked for suggestions, making the program better. And one of the things I said was, I didn't know you existed. Now, this was only the third cohort of this group, but I said, you got to market this to the local. We get the Township Association magazine. They need to be in that. And I said, you got to create some buzz over this because this is a phenomenal program. So my advice to my co-trustees is if you get the nod, you take it. It's a great opportunity. I'm grateful for it. So that's great. Thank you. And with that, we'll move on to our department reports. Administrator Rose.
Thank you, Mr. McIntosh, members of the board, everyone in the audience, good evening. On tonight's agenda, items D and E is tied to the pickleball courts. This is for the surface coat, nets, and fencing for the pickleball courts. That installation is to start next month. This is the township's portion of that. Our annual audit being conducted by the Auditor of State has begun, so we're in the middle of that. We're continuing to work with a couple of potential new businesses that are very interested in Concord Township. We're also working with an existing business on potential expansion plans, trying to help them put those things together. I'm coordinating with our fiscal office and completing all the necessary steps in order to receive our share of the ARP funds that have been allocated. The town hall parking lot is scheduled to be resurfaced. Sometime it'll be mid to late August when they get to the resurfacing of the parking lot. Service department will be out there in advance making some full depth repairs prior to the asphalt company's arrival. We've called in an electrician that's coming to the community center. We need to evaluate the parking lot lights. Majority aren't working. It's a safety issue, but we need to determine the scope of the work and what needs to be done. So we brought somebody in to tell us what's going on. And then finally, summer concert series. We washed out the last two, as Mrs. Lucci mentioned. So I'm looking forward to seeing everyone at tomorrow's concert with a great band. So that concludes my report. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rose. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the audience portion. I do recognize that we have people here that are specifically wanting to discuss item F on the agenda, and that's the approval of preliminary plan for the Quail Hollow plant PUD. So what we'll do is I'll have folks come up that want to, actually I think I'll invite the applicant or the developer up to speak. But I do want to make a clarifying point before we get into conversation and realize that the PUD for Quail Hollow was approved in 1985. That was 36 years ago. So far as public hearings, there isn't anything anymore. That occurred back then. So if you have questions or comments, the board is certainly open to hearing or answering them, but there is no public hearing and there is no public input to this? I don't know, Mr. Lucas, if you want to kind of clarify the process here as far as PUDs and where we are in that.
Sure. Well, just as a matter of clarification, the plan unit development was approved in 1986. Second of all, this isn't a public hearing where the residents express or advocate one position versus the other in terms of an issue that's ultimately going to be considered as part of the equation for the approval in that. However, they can certainly express their concerns and issues in that, and they can be addressed in that as part of the public portion. So.
Okay. So just clarifying that point, and to that, I will then invite the developer up if they've got any comments they want to just open up with or kind of set the stage for our discussion.
Yeah, please.
And of course, if you would name and address for the record, please.
I've done this once.
I know, I just.
Good evening, my name is David Novak from Barrington Consulting Group. The address is 9114 Tyler Boulevard, Mentor, Ohio. As it was mentioned a few moments ago, well, first of all, this is called Ivy Ridge. It's parcel number 30 of the Quail Hollow PUD. And it's a little under 31 and a half acre parcel, and again, it was part of the 1986 Quail Hollow PUD. And I think it's important for everybody to understand, again, this parcel is currently zoned as a PUD, part of the PUD. And what we're here for tonight is we are not discussing a rezoning. This is not a rezoning. It is already rezoned as a PUD. The original PUD documentation or maps or whatever that were prepared back in 1986 called for 250, the potential for 250 units on this parcel. Our plan that we have before the township this evening is there's 86 detached homes, 45 attached townhouses, for a total of 131 units. Again, that's 119 less than was originally conceived in 1986. There has been some changes that have occurred since 1986 in regard to this piece. And this map that I have here in front of me, it shows some of the, again, there are wetlands that are on the property, there's streams and so forth that are on the property, and those rules and regulations since 1986 have changed considerably. Another thing that has happened in Concord Township, July 15th, 2016, Concord adopted the riparian setbacks. So again, that's another thing that affects this piece of property. And we've taken all those things into account in the preparation of this plan. Again, our proposed is to do this in 3 phases. We're going to start over here on the east side of the project. Our phase line is going to go up to here near unit 24 and 67. This is all detached product. The second phase of this project will be a completion of the detached product, which is another 42 units. And then the third phase is this attached townhouses. Again, the detached area is comprised of about almost 17 acres. The density is a little over 5 units per acre. The townhouse area
is about 6.7 acres. Its density is about 6.7 units per acre. And the open space that's going to be part of this project is about 7.8 acres, or 24.8% of the property will remain untouched. So we're here this evening to answer any questions that the trustees may have for us. But I'm assuming that you'll want to, unless you want to ask any questions of me now, let your residents speak.
Is there anything for the board right off? Okay. With that, thank you, Mr. Novak. I will then invite anybody in the audience that would like to come forward and ask questions or speak upon this issue. Yes. And if you would, again, your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Name is Heidi Frisbee, and the address is 11467 Viceroy Street, Township. So, absolutely. All right. So, thanks for having us and opening the forum for the residents. Understanding the zoning that was done, and first, let me say this: I'm a business owner, so I'm pro economic development and I'm pro growth, right, for the community. One of the things I would say, though, is we're looking at something that was zoned in 1986, so we're not going to argue the zoning, but what I would really like to understand is what type of impact assessment has been done, because we're not looking at the same township that we were looking at in 1986 either. So that's really what, as a resident, I would like to understand, because there's a lot of impact both to traffic, to the school systems. This is a large influx of folks into the community. And it really does change, kind of, especially in our neighborhood where I'm at on Viceroy Street, it really does change our neighborhood and how we can be impacted by both traffic flow and additional citizenry. So that's the question that I had.
Okay, I think just from a point of it, why don't we just get through everybody's questions and then we'll kind of address everything all at the end. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Dan Kroc. I live at, I wrote it down here in case I forgot, 11482 Viceroy Street. Dave, I told you I was going to say hi tonight, so we spoke on the phone a number of times. Unfortunately, most of it was just recently when it sounded like a majority of this was already put to bed, and a lot of key decisions were made, and I was a little puzzled over that. And I think a lot of the other residents on Viceroy Street, because we're impacted the most with the project going in. So I understand that, you know, all this stuff took place, I guess, 30 years ago as far as zoning. So I'm not here to talk about that or argue whatever, but I actually spoke to a lot of the neighborhood, the people that live on Viceroy Street. I know Mrs. Lucci lives over on the other street in the allotment also. But it's kind of an odd scenario in a way when I was thinking about it, because we actually, the name of our allotment is Nature Preserve North, and it seems just the opposite of what we're doing, counterintuitive, because what we're basically doing and have this project go forward is we're cutting down literally thousands and thousands of trees. And, you know, some of them, took a little botany in college, some of them are like 75 to 100 years old. It seems a shame, but I understand that, you know, we must move forward, and this is a done deal. As far as that goes, Dave and I had some discussions as far as trying to, you know, maybe preserve. My daughter lives in Mountainside Farms. The Concord had a ruling in place that everybody had to keep 20 foot of a buffer in their backyards between the lots for trees, which seemed to make sense. It doesn't sound like that's a particular option at this point. I wouldn't mind trying to have that revisited, but my main thing would be this. From where I live now on Viceroy Street, my property and the Wallachs that live immediately next door, and the other people as you go down, are from our backyard. We'll literally see probably 6 to 7 units because, you know, of the vista, and all the trees are going to be taken down, just completely wiped out. So what I was asking for, and I talked to several of the neighbors, what we would like to see is some type of a mound put up and have the trees put on that so there would be affordable privacy not only for us, for the Viceroy residents, but also would be for the developers, new customers that are going to come in and buy the house. It would make it a lot more appealing for both sides. It would be very cost effective in a lot of ways because you'd be kind of addressing both properties at once simultaneously as you move down the line. So just a simple solution. Put some like Norway spruces on there. They seem to grow pretty quick, and I understand that there was a staggered thing that came out on the initial thing here. Actually, it might not. Actually, it does show the trees right here. But these would go on a mound, and then maybe I was hoping something around 4 foot high, and we could put the trees on top of that, and then we'd have a privacy thing going down the entire street for everybody. So that's just my suggestion, and maybe ask that I've talked to a number of people about. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. Good evening. Mike Rizzola, 11470 Viceroy Street. Before I begin, I'd like to commend Amy Lucci for maintaining a open channel of communication and keeping me and some of the others in the loop regarding the Ivy Ridge development. I wish that I was able to actually have a picture of what our backyards, living 3 doors down from Dan, look like right now. 100 to 200 feet of mature trees, and that's all we look at. And it's beautiful. My own fault, buyer beware. When I purchased that property 5 years ago, I was unaware. I was under the, and it's my own fault, I thought it was like Metro Parks, but I didn't know that there was possibly further development. And besides the aesthetics and the beauty of it, obviously it's going to impact our home values as well. I don't see them being enhanced by this. My wife and I sat on our porch and patio today, 5:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, total shade. We will have nothing but sun just beating down on us from here on out. We might as well be on that 9th hole of the Weisskopf course. I understand that this was all done in 1986 and all. I'm a little further north, so I guess what I'm going to get is the retention pond. We do have drainage issues right now, and as a matter of fact, right along where the property line is. During these heavy storms that we had in July, I literally had a running creek going through there. I know there's going to be a retention pond put in that area behind my house, as well as 2 others. My question regarding this pond, I mean, I see retention ponds in developments as you travel about. The depth of it, how much water will it hold? Will it be maintained? Will it be chemically maintained? You know, are we going to have nothing but bugs, geese, you know, throughout our backyards now as well? So that would be my major concern. And I know Dan touched on the buffer. You know, at this point, it's probably the best we can ask for. Again, I'm highly disappointed, and the beauty of this area of this development is totally going to be lost. But I would like to see something done in the way of a buffer. So from what I'm looking at now compared to what I'm going to be looking at, isn't as bad as I hope it's. Well, I hope it's not as bad as I think it may be. So thank you for your time, and thanks again.
Thank you.
Good evening. Dave Vitas at 8075. Dave Vitas, V-I-T-A-Z. 8075 North Orchard Road. The other road that's already in, Viceroy, at least they're getting a new road over to do drainage and things like that. Give you a little history. I was the first builder over on North Orchard. Again, there were no utilities. I paid to have the water line brought down. Again, the utility companies then brought the gas and water and all those down. But with that, then as the neighbors built, I charged them to tap in. So I did recover that, but again, that's how long ago that I was there. So also, we were told when we moved in that behind our property, and again, we look right at the I think it's the 11th or 12th green of the Weiskopf course. We were told that due to setback requirements and that they really could put a road behind there, but they couldn't build any houses. With this new plan, you'll see that there are about 4 houses now that are going back there. So I don't know what happened, what occurred with the setback requirements and things like that. Again, talk about that 20 feet easements that were originally in, but I guess they're not in anymore. What I'd like to ask is why that, or how that was changed, or when it was changed, or again, because when you have an abutting joining property owners, there's a requirement that the one property has to have a setback of 20 feet, where the developer now is butting up to the Quail Hollow golf course, which is owned by Quail Hollow, I assume, not by the developer, is why they don't have a 20-foot requirement. By eliminating that requirement, they're allowed to build these houses that are back there now. So I asked that question about the setback and the requirement. We talked to the developer about putting a mound to separate again, the roadway and our property, and he had agreed to it. But then recently, as yesterday I think it was, he called and said he couldn't put a mound in because the mound would be on top of the utilities that are going along the road. So and the utility company won't allow that. So we still haven't decided what the alternative might be. Drainage is a huge problem by us. We have wetlands over there. Again, because the road just has ditches on the side, and it's more of a kind of a tar and chip type road because it's so old. Again, I don't know how they're going to divert the water to clear the areas. Right now, again, like you all have flooding, we have flooding too along the side of our house. Talked to the developer too, because he was talking about clear cutting all the phases, again, cutting down all the trees. We'd asked him that because the phase by us is kind of in the future, a couple years in the future, if he could stagger his clear cutting to allow us to at least not have a wide open field for a couple of years. And again, he said he would consider it, but I don't know where he's come up with or what the results are yet. So again, I think like was mentioned before, what kind of surveys have been done of the traffic, because you're taking a little country road, cul-de-sac road, and now you're going to dump over 100 vehicles there a day, and they're going to end up on Girdle Road, and from Girdle Road they're going to travel west to 44, and that light that's there's no real turning lane right, and again, it gets backed up now sometimes in the morning, and I can only imagine what's going to happen in the future. Even getting out of North Orchard Road in the future will probably be difficult. So again, there's we're talking about hundreds, over 100 vehicles every day going through. So, again, the developer has talked about putting a fence up along my western property line, which is, we'd agreed to that. Because again, with all the houses that are there, and we're hoping that there's some restrictions on, I guess, storage sheds and things like that that would be right there and visible. And again, I don't know if Viceroy is going to have that same problem, but we're hoping that there are some restrictions that are placed so that those things don't happen. That's about all I have. But hopefully it can be addressed and it can be a successful project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Veach.
Hi there. So my name is Stephanie Lannon. I am a resident of 11391 Girdled. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. While I recognize the benefits of this project and what it's going to bring to the community, I have a couple of concerns I'd like to address. First and foremost is the matter of safety and visibility on Girdled Road. From where I'm lying, the end of my driveway as well as the end of Timberland, if you're looking, the southern visibility is very poor. There is a divot, a large hill, that at 45 miles an hour, when cars are coming up that hill and people are turning out from either our driveway or from Timberland, accidents, numerous accidents, and I can't give you an exact specific number, but I'm sure the sheriff's office could provide that. People have wound up in a ditch, either my ditch or the ditches across the street, on average once a month in front of my house. So I'm seeing a lot of the sheriff, I'm seeing a lot of the tow truck companies. It's great to be on a first name basis with them, but I only imagine that that will increase with this added traffic. My second concern pertains to opening the canopy line on the edge of mine as well as Jay and Mary Jo's property. This is going to cause some potential damage to roots and other trees on that property line. So one thing I would like to ask of the developer is that while they're removing those trees for this road, they continue on to the properties themselves and remove any potential hazards that may strike. I don't want to be responsible for that later on down the road. And then last but not least, I'd also like to propose one final thing to the council and the project team's consideration, is that we continuation with the privacy fences or forms of, whether it be the spruces along those sides of my property as well as Mary Jo and Jay's property. I think aesthetically this would be pleasing to our incoming members and residents. If we were to continue those privacy fences, it would offer a lot to the incoming community. So those are my concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Chris Lazuka, 8130 North Orchard Road. I think a lot of people have already echoed a lot of my sentiment about this. But I guess the one thing, and first of all, I wanted to thank a couple of you, Carl and Morgan, and even Todd, have been very responsive as we've asked a lot of questions, and so I wanted to thank you for that. But the one thing I keep, I guess, zooming in on is being on North Orchard is, when or was it permissible for this PUD to connect to North Orchard? As David mentioned, it is going to introduce a tremendous amount of traffic on a very small street. And I was confused because I swear, and I can't find it now, but I'd swear when the original PUDs showed an access drive coming in off of the High Grove area and not on Orchard. And maybe this is a simple answer, that they can just connect wherever they can. But I just was curious about whether that was done in a permissible way or if it was how that happened.
Sure. Chris, we've been tasked with trying to locate where so whatever legislative action is taken regarding that connect, and
So we got to go from today back to 1986 because it was I'm sure it was a phasing component. So we're still searching for that. We've gone through this century, and now we're into the 1990s and moving backwards to, and we haven't located it yet. So right now, I'm not giving you an answer because we haven't found in any of the council minutes in that a particular phase that dealt with that specific issue in that. And I guess the main point, we are trying to find it, but we have to go backwards a considerable amount, and back in the 1990s and up to...
Yeah, we barely had the internet then.
Yeah, yeah.
And I understood, my understanding of PUDs, and I'm not an expert by any means, but they seemed to be very well defined, very, very specific, right? And so.
Well, they are, and again, the overall PUD, when it was, as I'm thinking here, the overall PUD was intended to be developed in 12 phases when it was approved in 1986, and that was actually the preliminary plan that was approved, and identifying 12 phases over the course of 13 years, depending on how the economy was and everything. So, in that regard, the real specificity regarding street connections and that, when they submit a final development plan for a particular phase, is what hopefully we will find that will address that question you have in that. But we've got to look at final development plans for each phase that move forward from 1986 and that. So as I said, we're in the 1990s now, moving backwards. So, and by the way, call me anytime and I can give you an update where we are in that, because actually the building department is really working on it. I'm not.
Oh, okay.
But I'm in touch with the building department, also with the township administrator, in particular with reference to that specific question in that. So that's on a front burner from our perspective that we're trying to find. So, okay.
All right. I'll follow up with you on that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then I think, again, most people have said what other things I was going to say, but I know a lot of us are just crying over spilled milk. This development's going to happen, but I was thinking about how this property sat undeveloped for 30 years. Well, a lot happened around it in that time frame, right? You had a lot of, large size lots. You've got an extreme contrasting community about to drop in here. And, when does zoning kind of take another look? When these properties sit undeveloped for so long and all this happens around them, when does zoning kind of take a position to defend the existing community, right? Is it ever reviewed or kind of taken into consideration when these properties sit empty and you've got a lot happening around? Like, I guess I felt like this is, and we learn it kind of at the last minute, so we're scrambling to kind of, do anything, right? We all love that area. It's so beautiful. So, just food for thought, maybe for the future properties that are sitting undeveloped that all these beautiful neighborhoods go into, and then you drop this in here. No, it's just my thought. That's all. Oh, sorry, last thing, just to echo Dave, as well on that phase 3 side, if that clear cut could be delayed, a lot of people would appreciate that. I mean, if the housing market were to collapse next year, you've got this wasteland of beautiful forest cut down. So, thank you. Thank you.
Russ Scarvelli, 11534 Malachite Court, Nature Preserve North. My wife and I moved into Concord 2012, and we've been very happy with the leadership that Concord has. I'm beginning to have an issue with the fact that we had moved here because it was more of a rural community. And now it's turning into downtown Cleveland with all the establishments that are coming in. And that's fine. It's still 1.5 miles, 2 miles away from our residence. But now we're getting closer. They're going to be putting more development in. And now I got to worry about whether or not the sewer system's even going to handle it. It's a terrible shame when you know that the the water pressure gets lower, especially when they put the new development down there on Cryle Road, in the Cryle Road area, in addition to all the businesses they put down there. This was done in 1986. Isn't there a statute of limitations that it should have been done before now? And shouldn't the new people who were coming into the Concord Township been made aware that there's going to be more developments coming, that we could say, okay, I don't want to live here? I think that's another one. I mean, yeah, like it was written down that we moved into a township, it's turning into a major city now. I mean, we need answers as to why things are being implemented from 1986, and there's been changes, as Mr. Novak has pointed out, that everything that was going on in 1986, there's been some changes, or they're stopping them. I think it should go on the ballot. I think the people have a right to vote whether or not they want to have a larger community than what we moved into. This was the reason why we moved out here, because it was a small area. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Hi, Brandy Manzak, 11471 Viceroy. Again, I echo all the sentiments of my neighbors and fellow residents. One thing as I look at this, and particularly, dovetailing off of what you were just saying, this doesn't feel like the Concord also that we chose. So I'd love to just hear more about, what is the vision? Why was this selected? Even in terms of property values, like this is very compact and condensed, division that's being put in. I'd love to hear what the goals are in terms of the list prices for these homes. Are the townhomes going to be condominiums? Are they sold as single units, or is this a rental situation? I mean, all of this greatly impacts what we invested in as homeowners and what we've continued to invest in. My heart breaks for my neighbors across the street, and personally, I love looking out the windows and just seeing all the woods, and I mean, that's characteristic of the development that we chose to live in. And that's Concord Township. That's why we came here instead of all the different places that we could have selected in Northeast Ohio. We lived in a larger area. So I would just love to hear a little bit more, why this vision, why so many homes, and not just utilizing this space to have, similar homes that are the appeal of this area rather than a Mentor or somewhere else where any of us could have lived, but we chose Concord because of the virtues that were offered, being a resident here. So, that's my 2 cents. I mean, it is rattling. We just learned of this yesterday. So maybe others knew, but we did not know, and it directly impacts us. So thank you.
Okay, anybody else? I do know we have one participant on the phone, so I will ask if Ms. Messick has any questions or comments.
I would just like to say that I think that one of the solutions to a lot of these problems where there is existing subdivisions and then there's a new subdivision that is proposed for RCD or PCD or whatever, if the trustees would ask the zoning commission and then follow through with reasonable setbacks to safeguard existing subdivisions, that would greatly make the existing subdivision less prone to this, bulldoze all of the trees and you look right into somebody's back window. So I think that on all of this, significant time should be spent on looking at all the zoning text and increasing setbacks and making sure that no timbering or anything is allowed in that setback. And I think that would help a lot. I really feel sorry for the residents and those in this preliminary plan who are approving this preliminary plan. And you have a fair amount of leeway in terms of what you can and can't approve. So I hope that you will help the residents as much as possible.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I guess I'm not hearing any further comments, so a couple things. If it's any information prior to being a trustee. So with respect to development in Concord Township, I'd like to sort of reiterate something that our law director said at the start of it, that this project was approved in 1986. So the comments about a lot of the issues here, when we're talking about traffic, we're talking about the schools, and we're talking about the appeal of Concord Township and all of that, again, the zoning decision was made to that effect back in 1986. I think Mr. Novak brought up the fact that the zoning would permit for a much, much higher density of over 200 homes versus their proposed of 130. So just trying to put all of this development, so to speak, in perspective, and then again, going back to acknowledging that we're not really in a position where we can deny this. I heard a lot of comments about why are we allowing it. Again, the decision was made 35 years ago, so that ship has kind of sailed to that point. So we're only here to see through the PUD as it's being as it was written in 1986 and as this particular proposal is being presented to the board. So I think there's a couple of questions that have come up with respect to buffers, mounding, trees, drainage. I know I've had some conversation with the developer, but I guess I'd give them an opportunity if there's anything they'd like to address with respect to some of the questions that we had from the audience.
Well, again, and I can appreciate a lot of the comments and so forth that people made, and again, we've tried to have some conversations with some of the adjoining neighbors, and there are some key areas. For instance, this is along Viceroy, the backyards of the people on Viceroy. But this plan would have to have some participation from these residents. We are proposing to, at minimum, put a single row of trees on our side of the property. If they would, and these would be pine trees in the neighborhood of 5 to 6 feet tall. The variety that are proposed, I don't remember what they were, but again, they're probably in 5 to 10 years. There'll be a dense wall of trees there, so these residents won't see through. But if these residents over here would like us to, we're willing to go onto their property and in between each one of these trees, add another tree. So again, that buffer or that screening will occur sooner than later. And then also, somebody mentioned about a mound. Again, we could put a mound here, but we have some grading and drainage things that we have to address along that line. So normally when you create a mound, it's at a 3-to-1 slope. And just for somebody who might not understand what a 3-to-1 slope is you go out 3 feet and you go up 1 foot. And that is a maintainable slope, meaning that you can drive a lawnmower across that slope and you don't roll over. So if we only have 10 feet, the mound on our side of the line, the mound is only going to be 1.5 feet. I'm not going to say 1.5 feet isn't beneficial, but it's not a 6-foot mound. It's not an 8-foot mound. So it's going to be very limited. Now again, if the folks along here are willing to allow us to cross that property line, now we have an area that's 20 feet wide. We might be able to get a mound that's 4 feet tall. But again, that would mean going onto your property. In talking with Dan, he mentioned that, again, right now with these rains that we've had, that he has a lot of water flowing through his backyard. Well, as part of the regulations, we will have to capture all the water up to our property line. So we will have a swale of some sort, some drains through here, and take it to the detention basin that's down here. So that will really help that off-site water that's flowing onto the Viceroy property, the backs of these yards. We'll capture that, and it will not continue to go onto their property. So again, that should help them. There's two other locations. Again, this is Orchard. This is Lazuka here. Again, we agreed to put a fence along that property line to help shade or screen that area, and also along Vitas's westerly property line. The other area that Mr. Vitas is concerned about is back here. Again, we're showing to put some trees there, but from the property line to the edge of the road, there's 26 feet. And we have to have the road, we have to run utilities and so forth through there. So it's limited to what we can do. And also down here, I think Mr. Vitas commented about down Orchard Road, when you have these heavy rains, the water flows down those ditches and it diverts on both sides of Mr. Vitas's property. What we've agreed to do is to go out into Orchard, put some drains in there, capture that water before it gets to Mr. Vitas's property and those people down on the cul-de-sac, and route that water through our development and into our detention basin. So again, we're trying to be a good neighbor. Let's see, what else? At this time, we don't plan to allow storage sheds in this development. And there was a comment about phase 3, which phase 3 is where the attached product, the townhomes, would be, about potentially not clearing that until we got to that phase. Part of the problem with that is that when you have a wetland delineation done and you go through the process with the Ohio EPA and the Army Corps, once they issue you a permit and you have wetlands that you are going to impact, and we do have some wetlands that we are going to impact. And they're hatched here on this plan, like here. There's one here in that third phase. We only have, I believe it's 2 years, it might be less. I don't want to be quoted or held to that date, but we have to fill those wetlands in sooner than later. We can't wait 5 years or 3 years. The Army Corps permit requires us to do that. So we need to clear the property, we need to fill those wetlands in, or we will have to go through the entire permitting process again. And that's not something that we would want to do. There was also a comment about sanitary sewers. Again, when this project was, when Quail Hollow was developed, even when the Viceroy, there was a sanitary sewer stub that goes through these lots right here. I don't know what sublots these are, as part of this. And this sanitary sewer services about half of this project. And when when High Grove was developed, there's a sanitary sewer that comes along the golf course and services the other half of the property. So again, there is capacity within the sanitary sewer system governed by or controlled by the Lake County Utilities Department. So I don't know if there was other questions that the board has for me.
As far as the, I think there's a question from Mr. Brazillo about the retention basins. What would those look like?
We haven't completed the design yet to determine whether they will be wet or dry ponds, so I don't know that answer fully. But they will be maintained by the homeowners association. But on top of that, in Lake County, what will happen when these plans, or the improvement plans, are approved, the developer has to, there's mechanism within the Lake County Engineers Department, okay? And they have the right to come out and inspect the pond to make sure that it's functioning properly. And in order for the pond to function properly, it needs to be maintained. Because if you get trees growing out of it or whatever, and it blocks the outlets to the pond or the inlets or whatever, it's not going to function as it's intended. And so the homeowners association would be required to maintain that pond, but also the Lake County Engineers Department will oversee to make sure that it's being maintained properly.
Now, as far as the original PUD, you said there's been a substantial reduction in the number of proposed units?
Yes, the original PUD for this property here, it was under multifamily. There is, and there's a map that's floating around, and it clearly shows that the intent or the thought back in 1986 that this piece of property could support 250 units. It couldn't do that really today because of some of the things, again, that I spoke about earlier, wetlands, streams that are controlled by the Army Corps and the higher EPA, and then Concord added the riparian setbacks. So that's diminished the usable property.
So with the current proposal, you're looking at, I think it's 131 units?
Yes.
And which will result in more green space within the
Yes,
plan.
I mean, it would, again, if this property was developed with 250 units, it would be very compact, to say it nicely, okay?
If you're saying you don't think you should support 250 units, what do you think with the current regs, where would you be if you went another route?
Probably around 230.
Okay.
So it's not a large reduction, but again, you wouldn't have the open space and so forth. You know, we're at almost 25% of this development is open space.
So would you say, when considering, at least from the perspective of the developer, as far as addressing some of the concerns, you know, if we go back and listen to, you know, folks talking about the impact and trees being cut down and vistas changing and that, would this proposal that we have for us be the version that would do the best job preserving things? In other words, if you went the more higher density route, would the impact be
If we went
greater?
from the 131 units to the 230, 250, there would be less open space. I think that's the question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is we're hearing people talking about cutting down trees and so forth, and my view is in discussing with you over this period, the last few months that you've talked about this, is that if we're to go a different route with that, you would have less green space and we would have obviously more units, we'd have up to 100 more units in there. So I guess what I'm saying is the impact, the concerns that we've heard expressed tonight would be magnified, and this is the more palatable version of making this as low impact as possible. This is the plan.
Yes, this is lower impact than the 250 units.
I just have a question. Was there a traffic study done?
No. I mean, on one of the drawings, there is a table that on this page 2 here, there is a table over here that talks about what the traffic, based on standard tables, what those traffic counts would be and peak and so forth.
Mr. Lucas, I was wondering, I know that when we do rezones, we're often pressed with the developer often does a traffic impact, and that's a process with ODOT, and I don't know if either you or Mrs. Freeman could comment, but being as that this was prior approved, is there any way we can require a traffic study, or is there any, is that relevant, or is because the PUD was approved already, that's not part of the process?
Well, the township preliminary plan criteria under 16.12 does indicate that the preliminary plan should have a complete traffic impact evaluation, which shall include existing and proposed vehicular traffic patterns, the potential location of parking service areas within the commercial center, if any, and the estimate of traffic volumes to be generated, including existing and proposed major intersections which shall serve the proposed PUD and its immediate surrounding area. So that is a criteria under 16.12, paragraph F, in terms of a township preliminary plan approval under a PUD.
So they need, this would need to be performed.
Well, it meets, to meet that criteria, yeah, I think so.
But again, if you read that again, I believe that we've met that criteria by outlining what the traffic, actually, like I said, on number 2 here, we have estimated what those additional
Okay, so-
cars would be.
So let me
because
ask
of
you
this
the 3
development.
components of it, Dave, and you tell me if it's in there or not, all right?
Okay.
Okay. So you have identified existing and proposed vehicular traffic patterns.
I would have to say no to that.
Okay, well, that's required. Then number 2, the potential location of parking and, well, that's not applicable because it's not a commercial center, okay? And number 3, the estimate of traffic volumes to be generated, including existing and proposed major intersections, which shall serve the proposed PUD and its immediate surrounding areas. Have you done that?
I would say half of that, because
Okay.
we have estimated what the additional traffic will be generated because of this development.
Okay. So, and again, I'm not trying to be argumentative with you, but you've done 1.5, you've done a half of the 2 criteria. Is that fair to say?
I would say you're correct. However, I guess my question for you, Mr. Lucas, is when was that traffic study supposed to be done? Was that traffic study supposed to be done in 1986, or is that traffic study supposed to be done today?
They did a traffic impact study actually in 1986, but under this particular provision that I've quoted, and to some extent relative to Mr. Lazuka's question, which we're still trying to find the answer to, each phase provides more, and you know this better than I do, each phase provides the detail for the phasing to begin as a complement to the overall PUD approval, which occurred in 1986. And that's what you're doing now by presenting this preliminary plan. And, the only thing I could say with reference to that is that certainly the detail for this particular phase under, Mr. Victor's property certainly contemplated this particular component that I just quoted to you under 16.12F for presentation. And again, the purpose is not for me to be argumentative with you because that's not my way, as you know, but I'm pointing out what is required, all right, and that's why I directly asked you, have you done this? Have you?
Again, my counter to that is again, because there was an impact study done back in 1986, and our density is about half of what was conceived back in 1986.
Yes.
So I would argue the fact that if we're doing less, let's say half of what was proposed back in 1986, that we would have met or been below those impacts that was anticipated back in 1986.
Well, I've looked at the traffic impact from 1986, and again, you know this area better than I do, but that is not correct, number one. And I would say, a nice try, but it's not, I don't mean to make light of that either, Dave. It's not persuasive, and it's not in conformity with each submission of a development plan, preliminary development plan for each phase under that 16.12. And I'm willing to be educated on it, but I think.
Again, I'm not a traffic engineer, so
Yeah,
I
well,
can't-
I'm not either, but I know it requires that.
Okay.
Because I'm a lawyer. So, I mean, I think, you know, you need to tune that up a little bit. And take a look at the section. I'm willing to be educated on it, but you know, I don't have a big ego either, but I'm right. So.
So am I, Mike.
Yeah, I know you are. Thank God we checked our egos at the door before we came in, so.
Most of mine, anyway.
Yeah.
All right, I do know that we have another resident who would like to speak or raise a question. So I'm gonna two things. I'm gonna ask the board if there's any more questions for Mr. Novak or Mr. Novak, if you have anything else for us at this time.
I have one thing, Mr. Chair. I want to make sure we capture that. Ma'am, I'm sorry I didn't catch your name, but I know you're at 11391 Girdle, right?
Yes, Stephanie Lannon.
Thank you. She had talked about, you know, the folks on Viceroy, the folks on North Orchard. I think she's asking for the same thing with some screening or some fencing. So I don't want that to get lost in this conversation. It was the only thing that wasn't covered when we were talking about trying to do some buffer work, and I think it's on the, right there where you're going in the Girdle. No, sir, up right here. Yeah.
86, lot 86, so that
Right.
is the end of our project.
86, you said?
Yeah, 86 lot right up to the 22 trees that are gonna be left. And then we'll also
Oh,
have
yeah.
the street that's being built on the side.
Now, that area right there along 86, it's actually, we are planning to preserve those trees along that line, probably about a 10-foot strip of trees.
The major concern would be where the road is coming in through the property.
Well, again, the problem there is that strip of land is only 60 feet wide. And we have a road that's 23, the pavement width is 23. And we have utilities that have to come down through that area. So it's very limited as to what we can and can't do.
We would be willing to work with you on that for sure.
Okay, well, we could surely meet and have that discussion and see what we can do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything else for us? Okay. Here's what I'm going to do. Being as, again, this is not technically a public hearing, this is really just the audience participation point of the second trustee meeting of the month. What I'm going to do is just request if anybody has questions. I'd like to really confine this to questions or statements simply because if we're going to rehash, I mean, if you have a question for us or the developer or a brief statement to make, I kind of want to make sure that we don't get out of heel because, again, we only have so much latitude as far as dealing with the PUD. In fact, our constraint is quite narrow. So again, when we talk about a lot of these concerns, I want to remind you that when it comes to water and drainage, that as Mr. Novak said, we do have county agencies that are, and I know that we just went through this with an actual rezone where stormwater features aren't designed yet, but calculations are done and that does affect. So in those cases, a lot of these things are estimated as preliminary, and as they get developed, I don't want the community to be concerned about preliminary in the sense that they're just estimates now, but that when they go through the process, they do have to be approved by these agencies. And just because they're preliminary doesn't mean they're going to be engineered to be inadequate. So speaking along those lines, I would release Mr. Novak, and then if anybody has any other questions or very brief comments, because like I said, there's only so much we can debate or discuss tonight. You need to go to the microphone, please.
Thank you, sir.
My question is, we have two areas at the end of Viceroy and at the end of Butterfly on the north side that have gates up. Are those going to be opened up because of this new development so that people can travel through Nature Preserve?
Mr. Novak is indicating no.
None, okay, good. What is the value of these new homes that are going to be coming in?
I will let Mr. Novak speak to that. Actually, let's get all the other questions and then we'll kind of
And
try
there's
to
one other one. Because it's been since 1986, is there a possibility that the new residents can now vote? on another ballot?
A vote for what?
As far as putting in a new development at Quail Hollow.
I'm
sorry,
think
I
he
don't-
mentioned something about statute of limitations or something. That doesn't apply. Mr. Lucas, you can.
There's no statute of limitations on that. The owner of the property has a right to.
Even though there's been some things that's been changed?
It's been changed actually to the detriment of the owner.
Correct.
Okay.
You know.
I thought I'd ask.
Specifically the riparians, which diminishes the number of density that would have been there in 1986, and also the wetlands, which both of those are far more aggressive today than they were back in the pastoral days of 1986. So.
Like I said, I wanted to find out.
No, that's fine.
To make sure that there's not going to be access from other areas to come in and do driving up, back and forth. We have enough traffic.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you don't need to put that.
Dave Vitas, North Orchard. My question is, we keep on talking about the PUD in 1986 and how it's kind of the governing body of this whole thing. But again, there's been changes that, and the one I'm thinking of is the fire department. You know, back in '86, every road that was kind of a dead end had to have a cul-de-sac in it. But now I guess now that's been changed, and it's to the benefit of the developer, not to the benefit of the cul-de-sac. That they can change it and do, if the street isn't so far, they don't have to put a cul-de-sac in it. Is that correct?
Well, the fire department, if I may, Mr. Chairman, sure. The fire department generally wants a cul-de-sac, number one. Right. But number two, with every new development, and this has been historical seemingly forever, Dave, that they want 2 points of access to any new phase of a development. And they're very, very pointed on that. They voice that constantly. And I in all the years I've been here, I've never seen them make an exception to that. They're adamant they need, and then they're bringing their wherewithal as the fire department is, here's why we need that. So again, historically, the township has given considerable deference to what a safety force believes is necessary in that regard. So
But I think in this development, there might be one cul-de-sac and a lot of them are short roads, short streets that are allowing them to, I guess, the fire department can back down the street or whatever. But my point is that can be changed. This 1986 PUD can be changed for that benefit, but it can't, or for that reason. You're saying you can't change anything else, which I guess we all want to know that why can't it be changed then, but now not changed now?
Well,
and
there's
again,
two
I don't know
separate
what-
parts of that. The first part is the actual zoning, which was changed in 1986 to a planned unit development.
Right.
Now, over the course of from 1986 through to the present, first of all, there was a change in the Ohio statute governing planned unit developments under 519.021. That was changed in a major formatting in 1997. In addition to which, the township has the authority to update regulations, planned unit development regulations, and they have. If you went through Article 16, the first 12 provisions within that article, and you see the dates they were enacted, there's been a continuing course of updating up through and including, I believe, 2018. All right, but the point that's being made by the board, and I think also by you, Dave, is that those planned unit development regulations can be transient and be added under the code, but not the actual planned unit development itself and what that entails and what brings to the table on that. And what was presented at the time it was passed by rezoning in 1986. So anything that the township's locked into that. They can't change, the anticipated density under the original plan that was approved by making it larger, all right? They can agree because the proposal by the applicant will reduce it, all right, which is being done here. And some of that is controlled by what was already passed vis-a-vis the riparian setbacks and the wetlands, which didn't have anything to do with it. Well, the riparian setback did. The township regulated that and thereby reduced what was able to be developed. The Army Corps of Engineers wetlands, the wetlands have obviously environmentally have become, and good for them, has become more prevalent and aggressive in terms of what they require in that through development now, as opposed to 1986. So that's reduced it as well. So it's not like it's a static, document itself, because there's other components to it as well. And the township's made, additional regulations in that. But you can never, under the rezoning that occurred in 1986, move off basic rights that are inherent in a planned unit development.
The current statute or PUD that the township has now is far different than what it is in 1986, I would assume.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
Yep.
And the one key to it is the density hours. Is that so much per acre now compared to then?
I would say that the acreage that was originally identified for each of the phases, which it was in the plan that they submitted in conjunction with the rezoning in 1986, the numbers for each of those phases, I don't know this with certainty because I haven't looked at it, but I would venture to say it would be reasonable to think those numbers have been compressed a little bit because of riparian setback requirements now, and also wetlands that have become far more detailed in terms of delineations and remediation if you're disturbing wetlands. And as an editorial aside, what the Army Corps of Engineers and the federal and state EPA views as a wetland is far more liberally construed than what it was back in 1986.
And again, I know you might have to research this, but the idea that the current developer inherited the rights to the setback requirements that aren't required because Quail Hollow they own Quail Hollow and this developer owns the land. Again, they don't have to put up with the setback requirements.
Whatever is required under the planned unit development regulations, as they are right now, is what they're required to comply with.
And again, my point is, you have Quail Hollow, the golf course, and you have the developer, okay? Where that meets, is there a requirement for the setback?
Well, when you asked that, I looked real quick, and I didn't see it, all right? Now, I looked real quick, and Dave, I'll look at it more studiously after the meeting's over, but in looking at the regulations, there's no 20-foot requirement. I didn't see it.
And that's even though they have two different owners.
I don't know what happened with the one you're referencing in comparison to the Quail in reference to what is being presented today. So I would have to look at that too to give you a complete answer.
Okay.
And I'm not disputing you, by the way. I'm sure you're saying that accurately.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm Beverly Vitas, 8075 North Orchard, and I just wanted a clarification from Mr. Novak. It was my understanding, that, because we have about 400 feet of driveway with a water problem, and you mentioned that you were collecting all the water before in the cul-de-sac, okay? It's also my understanding that you are collecting all the water from your development also along so that it's not coming onto our property, And I believe that's what I was told. You made it unclear to me when you were, how you said it, okay? It's not my misunderstanding that your development is not going to impact any of the water on the adjacent land, that you collect all the water on your land?
If you want to let Mr. Novak.
Okay, you do it later on. It was just something I wanted to clarify.
Is there anything else that you have?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I just got confused with your statement, because it was too specific. Mhm.
Okay, we'll let Mr. Novak. Actually, before he gets up again, is there anybody else that has a question? So we're kind of not doing this back and forth thing. I like to keep this moving.
Again, I'd be really interested in knowing the square footage, the price per square foot, and then for phase 3, what is the plan? Is that rental space, or are those going to be owned? How will that be written into the HOA? So that's Brandy Manzak, 11471 Vice Road.
Mike Rizzola, 11470 Viceroy. My question is not philosophical nor legal, and I don't want to lessen the concerns of those on Orchard Park and Girdled Road because your issues are tremendous as well. Mine has to do with the Viceroy phase, though. And I was just wondering, that street with the cul-de-sac, why couldn't it have been pushed just a little west where the natural buffer of trees could have been maintained to a certain degree? Once I thought, well, why aren't they on the other side of the street where the backs of the homes, like any other normal golf course community, you want the rear of the home facing the golf course instead of the front of the home. But I don't know if that's possible. You may lose a couple lots, but could that street have been moved a little further to the west? I know you're facing the 9th green and the 10th tee box. I'm aware of that. But that may save some of those trees and then they create a natural buffer itself. If that's possible.
Yeah, like I said, we want to keep this moving. Somebody else from Novak wants to answer these questions.
I will do my best. Somebody asked a question about home values. We anticipated the detached product to be in the same price range as, or better than, the homes that have been constructed in High Grove. Those houses there range, I think the lowest end was 330. The high end was 650, I believe. So there's definitely some value. Probably if the lumber prices don't come down, it might be more. The attached units really won't be in that that price range. I don't have any real values on the attached product. Somebody had mentioned something about the cul-de-sacs and so forth for the fire department. I can tell you that one of our plans, I've had probably 15 different iterations of this plan. And we met with the fire department, and in lieu of cul-de-sacs, it's dependent on the length of the street and so forth, what they require at the end. A hammerhead, which is like this one right here, is adequate as far as the fire department is concerned, and it's my belief that the fire department has reviewed this latest plan and is okay with cul-de-sac versus hammerheads that we've provided. The water that's coming down, currently down Orchard, probably just before the cul-de-sac bubble, is where we're going to capture that water and we're going to redirect it to the detention basin that's
Well, what about
That's-
the property that's before it? What about the property along that you're-
But again, as part of the Lake County regulations, we have to contain our water that's on our property, okay? To the best of our ability. Can we get every drop? Probably not. But and so again, there will be, I would imagine along your western property line, we will have a swale or something and some yard drains and so forth back there to collect that water
On your side.
on our side. But again, a lot of the water south of the cul-de-sac that's coming down those ditches will be picked up with drains, redirected. So again, are we going to get all that water? Probably not, but it's going to be much less than that's there today. There was a question about rental of the townhouses. That's not what we're anticipating today. And the last comment that, if I understood it right, the gentleman wanted us to move this street this way, along the back of Viceroy. The problem is when we move that street, again, we have, if you can see on this map, there's a stream that comes through here that has a riparian setback on it. When it crosses underneath the proposed street, that's a stream that we're impacting. And the Army Corps only allows so many lineal feet of stream impact. So when it gets on the other side of this, again, this darker green that has this blue line through the middle of it that's a stream that's not being impacted and has the riparian setback, the requirement from Concord of this riparian setback. So if we push this way, we're going to lose probably 4 lots. We had one plan where we talked about actually taking the road up here along the backside of the people on Viceroy. It was our opinion that would not be a good decision because these people back here would just see cars going back and forth right along their rear property. So I believe those are all the questions they asked.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Lucas, these are a question here. So I understand that for the most part we have this PUD and again, this was not a public hearing, this was really, and again, I guess I want to express my appreciation to everybody that showed up and asked the questions and the dialogue, and also express my appreciation to the developer for having the patience to answer the questions and to be present this evening. So the one thing that I did hear come up in the conversation was with respect to the traffic. So from a standpoint of, I know when we're doing rezones, we always can offer conditional approval contingent on these extra things. From a standpoint of the PUD, with that not being met, or at least per your interpretation, where are we at in procedure?
Well, I mean, a complete traffic impact evaluation that I discussed with Mr. Novak is a requirement of the preliminary development plan. So
we would need that in order to approve it.
Unless you want to waive that, your own resolution's requirement regarding it, which of course I would not approve of. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any comments or questions from the board?
I would also like to echo Trustee McIntosh's statement. These are challenging decisions, and it impacts people and our residents and our neighborhoods. I grew up in the area, served the area for 28 years, and the developer obviously has a right to develop his property. We try to always do our best to encourage productive dialogue between not only the developer, but the impacted communities. And we try to facilitate that to the best of our ability to try to make accommodations and things of that nature that can be made in agreement to still fulfill the developer's intentions on developing the property and still also try to be less impactful to the residents, because again, we always do our best to balance, and make decisions in what's in the best interest of the township. So, it's not always easy, but we have to function as trustees by the letter of the law, and we only have so much latitude also. So I do appreciate everybody being here today and being involved in the process, because it's not easy. And I know a lot of you in this room for many years. So we really appreciate you being involved and raised a lot of good issues. And thank you.
And obviously, I have the same, as Mr. Gondorf said, it's my neighborhood too. So I understand where a lot of you are coming from. I also understand the developer's part in this too. And I think, finding that right balance, I think the developer's shown that he's trying to work in some of the areas that people are asking for in terms of buffers, drainage issues, what the impact will be on schools and on traffic. I think, we get that information from them. But at the same time, we have to remember that, we wanted to come here and, people let us in and people want to come here and, people may want to move here too. And we have to remember that we sometimes have to allow that as well, in a way that's respectful of the community, what Concord, what it's supposed to look like according to what the residents, desire. So it's a balance. When I moved in to Nature Preserve, I had all woods behind me, and then lo and behold, my neighbor took down all the trees and put a pool and a playground for his kids. So I knew it was coming, but that's sort of what I had to deal with. I still love the development, and I think there is, a lot of beauty to it. I don't want to see, sidewalks or any of that sort of thing. We're not a city, we're not Cleveland at all. But there is a balance there. I guess that's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'll echo the comments. I mean, I've been on the zoning board since 2009 and dealt with a lot of this. I've had several of these conversations before. For those who aren't familiar, the township does have a comprehensive plan, and there's a lot of thought process that went into the how that's gone, developed, and where the township's going. So we had Mr. McDonald from the Board of Elections coming, and Concord Township is one of the fastest growing communities in Lake County, has been for well over a decade. I first moved out here in 1985 when I was a child, and ironically that's about when all of this was going on, and Concord was a very different place even back then. I returned around 2000. I do know that when Quail Hollow was approved, it was contentious. It was, people didn't want development, and it got approved, and we continue to have the same conversation as more and more developments come in. I've had this conversation with conservation zoning discussions. I know there was a lot of opposition to Summerwood where I live. I thought I knew a little bit about things going on, and I picked a lot in Summerwood, or a home that was built, and I had trees in my backyard. Came home one day because I forgot something from work and was preparing to go out of town for a business trip, and a lot of my trees were gone in the yard. 2 lots got cleared. I thought my yard abutted a ribbon that was conservation zone. So I appreciate, I've had the experience of seeing something I thought I was going to have taken away. And so I understand what that feels like. Having talked with the developer over several months over this thing, knowing that it was coming up a while back, I think the product that I'm proposing is probably the best option for Concord Township, being is that the decision to do this kind of development was made 30 years ago. It's always tough, but we have to balance it. Concord is growing and will continue to grow. In understanding zoning, the residential districts that have been in place or that we see developed, we have Conservation District we approved a year ago over off Colburn Road. That was a residential zoning R1, so a little bit of a change, but it was always going to be homes. That dated back to the 60s. So a lot of the Concord Township zoning was adopted in the 60s, and our residential districts really were set a long time ago. So where we have these big open fields, it's private landowners that are waiting, and then they sell the property, and the township does the best that we can to balance that development and proceed carefully. In this case, we're of limited scope. So I appreciate all of you coming tonight, and I wish I was able to tell the developer, hey, good, but we've got something that we need to address. I've done a lot of diligence on it to take a look at the history. We are seeing this sort of play forward the way it was determined so many years ago, and we're not in a position to stop that. What we can do is encourage the community and the developer to work together to deal with some of these issues, and I think he's been willing to do that as far as landscaping and these different things. So I encourage and request, if you have further questions, to be in contact with the trustees, the zoning department, or the developer directly if he's willing to deal with that, and we'll need to move along as far as that traffic study. And so with that, I think we'll move on with our agenda this evening. Yes, Vanessa.
I had a comment on a different issue.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Thank you. If you'll just hold me for 1 second, I will then continue. Thank you for catching that. We will resume the audience portion of the meeting that has not to do. If there's anything other than this particular topic. So if anybody has regular, anybody present? Okay, Vanessa, if you have a audience participation or comment question.
Sure, yes, thank you very much. I listened to the last trustee meeting where you discussed and then you approved going out for bids for both fire stations and which station would be built first. And in listening to the discussion, it seemed that there was a formal presentation and discussion by the major stakeholders, as owners rep, other people, at the trustee office hours, which were prior to the trustee meeting. And I'm sure that there would have been citizens who would have wanted to listen to the meeting, but they didn't even know about the meeting. And so these types of meetings that are soon to be planned, I would ask that they be advertised on the website under trustee office hours, like as an agenda item, so that citizens would be able to attend the office hours if they felt that something like that was going to be discussed. Something like the fire station really impacts the community significantly. We're going to be spending about $14 million. So I think that adding that to the website as an agenda item would improve transparency. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay. I would just like to add that the office hours there's no formal agenda. It's trustees being available, and there was nothing that occurred in office hours that didn't occur on the public record during the trustee meeting. With that, old business, seeing none, we will move into new business. And the first, Mr. Chair, Mr. Administrator, I know that we have a resolution for you to read regarding a recognition of our BZA member Blair Hamilton.
I do. Resolution 2021-14 recognizing Blair Hamilton. Whereas Mr. Blair Hamilton, a longtime resident of Concord Township who served on the Board of Zoning and Appeals from April 2002 through July 2021, and whereas during his participation and service on the zoning board, he brought forth sound guidance, enthusiasm, and integrity toward any consideration before the board while demonstrating both thoroughness and fairness in his analysis and in all of his zoning decisions. Now therefore be it resolved by the Concord Township Board of Trustees, Lake County, Ohio, that the trustees wish to extend their sincere appreciation for his 19 years of service and for upholding the spirit and intent of Concord zoning regulations for the betterment of this community both today and for many years to come.
I will make a motion to approve Resolution 2021-14, recognition of Blair Hamilton.
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Member appointment Todd Goling, effective 7/21/2021 through March 31st, 2024, from Board of Zoning Appeals alternate position.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the reassignment of firefighter 1 Hyle Squire to the status of regular firefighter paramedic effective 8/1/2021.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move to approve purchase order to Willoughby Fence Company in the amount of $9,321.56 for pickleball court fencing.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the PO to Industrial Surface Sealer Incorporated in the amount of $9,926 for pickleball surface and netting.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I move to vote on the approval of the preliminary plan for Quail Hollow Plan Unit Development, Ivy Ridge Parcel 30 by Quail Developers Incorporated.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I have a couple of letters for resignation. Mr. Rose?
Yes, sir. Eagle Scout Ryan J. Grabnar. It is with great pleasure that the trustees of Concord Township extend their congratulations to Ryan J. Grabner for attainment of the very prestigious honor of Eagle Scout. Anyone who has known a Scout understands the hard work and dedication that accompanies the achievement of Eagle Scout. However, it is certainly worth noting that only about 6% of your peers will achieve the same rank, and that you will stand among those Eagle Scouts that have become great leaders in this country. It is impressive that you have chosen scouting from your youngest years as one of your primary guides towards character development. You have exemplified the ideals and goals of scouting in innumerable ways over the past 12 years, building lifelong skills, including first aid and emergency preparedness, to communications and personal management, to name a few. Your leadership and service demonstrated with your Eagle Scout project consisted of developing a detailed project plan, obtaining donations, and organizing volunteers to refurbish a dilapidated pond area at Hershey Montessori School to create an outdoor learning center. This project required clearing of overgrowth, repair of split rail fencing, refurbishment of the existing dock, upgrading safety equipment, and the installation of locust tree seats and a table, and came at a time when such space was especially valuable. Already, dozens of students have enjoyed the benefit of the natural classroom, and this project will continue to serve the children of Hershey Montessori School for years to come. We wish you the best as you enter your senior year at Lake Catholic High School, continuing your growth and leadership as a section leader for the Lake Catholic High School Marching Band, your involvement in concert and jazz band performance, and your 4th year as a lock on the Lake Catholic rugby team. We look forward to watching you grow as a future community leader. Congratulations on becoming an Eagle Scout. Sincerely, the Concord Township Board of Trustees. And to move to the second recognition letter, Eagle Scout, Eagle Scout Gregory M. Pradina. It is with great pleasure that the trustees of Concord Township extend their congratulations to Gregory M. Pradina for attainment of the very prestigious honor of Eagle Scout. Anyone who has known a Scout understands the hard work and dedication that accompanies the achievement of Eagle Scout. However, it is certainly worth noting that only about 6% of your peers will achieve the same rank, and that you will stand among those Eagle Scouts that have become great leaders in your country. Your leadership and service demonstrated with your Eagle Scout project consisted of developing a detailed project plan, raising funds, organizing volunteers, and installing wooden backstops for 3 of the baseball fields at Eleanor B. Garfield Park. These wooden backstops will serve to stabilize the chain link fence and will also serve as protection for all who use the ball fields for years to come. We wish you the best as you pursue your business degree at Siena Heights University, and we look forward to watching you grow as a future community leader. Congratulations on becoming an Eagle Scout. Sincerely, the Concord Township Board of Trustees.
Okay, Mr. Rose, future meetings and announcements.
Future meetings and announcements, Friday, July 30th at 9 a.m. will be a staff meeting at Town Hall. It'll be in the conference room. August 3rd at 7 p.m., the Zoning Commission will meet here at Town Hall. And on August 4th, from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. will be trustee office hours in the conference room. At 7:30 p.m. will be the trustee meeting at Town Hall. That concludes future meetings and announcements, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just for the audience members of that, this is the preliminary plan that was approved. There's a final development plan that has to be approved. There's a public hearing on that. There's a notice in the paper, and that is a public hearing where the residents come in and voice whatever they wish to voice regarding the final development plan. Now, in the final development plan criteria, the board also approves again the preliminary development plan. And the reason I mention that is because at that point, there will be a traffic study in accordance with that requirement that I mentioned earlier. Otherwise, it's not going to be approved. So just so the residents know, the actual final pen to paper is going to be subject to an entirely new hearing before the board and the public. So, okay.
Thank you. And with that, adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.